He swore he would never accept her as his wife or touch her, but on their first night her beauty shattered all his promises. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Today, I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story, one filled with warmth, care, emotion, high drama, and an incredible narrative. Before we begin, let us take a moment to pray together. Heavenly Father, we come before you with humble hearts, seeking your love and guidance. Bless this beautiful family with peace, joy, and wisdom. May every word shared here today bring light, healing, and inspiration. Fill our hearts with kindness, understanding, and unconditional love. Protect us from negativity and lead us on the path of righteousness. We trust in your divine plan, and we thank you for surrounding us with such a wonderful and loving family. Amen. My beautiful family, I have been reading your comments on the last two stories, and I truly appreciate your efforts to correct me when needed. We are all human, and we all make mistakes. But having such a caring family like you makes me feel incredibly blessed. In my last story, I shared a journey of transformation, a story that at first 99% of you embraced with love, while a few had questions. But by the end you witnessed something truly beautiful, the power of love, respect, and care. How she transformed his heart in the most touching way. I want to assure you, my beautiful family, that I will never share anything that goes against God's laws or ethics. My only mission is to spread love, positivity, and heartfelt emotions through these stories. If at any point my words have ever hurt you, please forgive me. Hurting someone means hurting God, our Creator, and that is the last thing I would ever want to do. This story today has been created with immense effort and care, and I promise you, I will do my best to bring you something truly special. If you're still with me and ready for another powerful journey, comment below. We are with Mr. Peter. Let's begin with love and faith. The New York Stock Exchange bell echoed through Wall Street, signaling another day of battle between America's two greatest business dynasties. For 50 years, the Damon Corporation and Walton Industries had dominated headlines, their fierce competition reshaping global markets and defining an era of American capitalism. Mr. Damon John, standing in his penthouse office atop the gleaming Damon Tower, watched the morning sun reflect off the Walton Building across Manhattan. His empire sprawled across 5 continents: technology, artificial intelligence, aerospace, and digital innovation. Every morning he woke to wage war against his oldest rival, Richard Walton. The rivalry had begun in the technological revolution of the 1970s. Mr. Damon John, a brilliant innovator with dreams of changing the world, had secured a crucial government contract that Richard Walton had considered his birthright. That single moment sparked a competition that would span generations. Through the decades, their battles became legendary. When Walton Industries launched a revolutionary communications platform, the Damon Corporation countered with breakthrough encryption technology. Every victory came at a devastating cost. Every defeat fueled their determination to fight harder. The business world watched their war with fascination. Young entrepreneurs studied their strategies, journalists chronicled their battles, and competitors learned to fear their combined influence. Their children grew up in the shadow of this rivalry, inheriting not just wealth, but the weight of a generational conflict. Today, however, something was different. Mr. Damon John's assistant noticed his unusual stillness as he studied the morning's financial reports. Global Tech, a startup barely 5 years old, had captured 15% of their core market. Quantum Solutions, another upstart, was revolutionizing the very industry they'd helped build. "Sir," his assistant ventured, "the board members are requesting an emergency meeting. The Asian market numbers—" "Tell them tomorrow," he replied, his deep voice carrying the authority of decades of command. His eyes remained fixed on a different document, a private intelligence report about Richard Walton's recent movements. His rival had been making unusual decisions, selling off non-core assets, consolidating power. He recognized the pattern because he'd been doing the same thing. Across the city, in the Walton Building's executive suite, Richard Walton faced similar concerns. At 70, he carried himself with the same military precision he'd learned at West Point, but today, his shoulders bore an extra burden. The morning's Wall Street Journal lay open on his desk. Tech giants face digital revolution. Can old guards survive? The article detailed how younger, more agile companies were eroding their market share. While the Damon Corporation and Walton Industries fought their endless war, new competitors had emerged from Silicon Valley garages and Bangalore tech hubs. These startups, unburdened by old rivalries, were reinventing the rules of business. Richard Walton's son, Shane, epitomized the next generation's challenges. At 25, he possessed his father's business acumen and command presence, but his attention was increasingly divided. His relationship with Hilda Martinez, a stunning socialite who collected luxury gifts like trophies, worried Richard. Each time Shane appeared in the society pages with Hilda, their competitors' stocks rose slightly, as if the market sensed distraction in the Walton air. Meanwhile, the Damon family harbored their own secret. April Damon, at 24, carried herself with a grace that turned heads and a kindness that won hearts. Few knew she was adopted, taken in by the Damons after her biological mother, Mrs. Damon's closest friend, died in childbirth. Her biological father, consumed by grief, had rejected her, and the Damons had given her everything: their name, their love, and their protection. April moved through the world of high finance like a breath of fresh air, more interested in her dreams of fashion design than corporate warfare. Her adoptive parents had sheltered her from the ugliest aspects of their business rivalry, but they couldn't shield her from destiny forever. The morning's trading showed both companies' stocks sliding further. Young tech firms were announcing innovations daily, while the Damon Corporation and Walton Industries remained locked in their dance of mutual destruction. Market analysts began whispering about the end of an era. In their respective towers, both patriarchs reached for their phones at almost the same moment. Mr. Damon John's finger hovered over Richard Walton's private number, a number never used in 50 years of competition. In the Walton Building, Richard Walton stared at his own phone, considering a call he'd sworn he'd never make. The world was changing too fast. Their children deserved more than an inherited war. Their empires, built with decades of sweat and genius, were crumbling while they fought each other. Something had to change. Mr. Damon John made the call first. 3 rings, then a familiar voice. Walton. "Richard," Mr. Damon John said, his voice carrying half a century of history. "We need to talk. No lawyers, no boards, no press, just us." The silence stretched for what felt like eternity. Both men thought of every battle, every victory, every defeat. Both thought of their children, their legacies, their empires teetering on the brink of irrelevance. "The Hamilton Room at the Metropolitan Club," Richard finally replied. 8 o'clock tonight. The Metropolitan Club, that bastion of old New York power, had hosted countless secret meetings that changed the course of American business. Tonight would be another such meeting, though none of the club's discreet staff could have guessed its historic importance. Mr. Damon John arrived first, instructing his driver to use the private entrance. The Hamilton Room, with its rich mahogany panels and oil paintings of long-dead industrialists, suited the gravity of the moment. He ordered Scotch, Macallan 25, the same brand Richard Walton favored. Richard Walton entered precisely at 8, his silver hair and immaculate suit a testament to old-world power. Both men had dismissed their security details, meeting truly alone for the first time in decades. "John," Richard nodded, taking his seat. "Richard," Mr. Damon John replied, sliding the second Scotch across the table. They studied each other in silence, these titans of industry who had shaped the modern world. Their rivalry had driven innovation, created millions of jobs, and transformed technology. It had also cost them both more than they cared to admit. "Our war has gone on long enough," Mr. Damon John finally said, his voice heavy with the weight of truth. "While we fight each other, the world is passing us by." Richard Walton took a slow sip of scotch, savoring its complexity. Global tech, quantum solutions, neodynamics, they're eating our market share while we bleed each other dry. "The Asian markets are slipping away," Mr. Damon John added. "European contracts going to younger firms. Our children deserve better than inheriting a crumbling empire." "Shane?" Richard paused, choosing his words carefully. "He's brilliant, but distracted. That girl he's with, Hilda, she's wrong for him, wrong for the company." Mr. Damon John nodded slowly. "April has such potential, but this war, it limits her options, her future." The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Both men knew what needed to be done, but neither wanted to be the first to suggest it. Finally, Richard Walton set down his glass and looked directly at his oldest rival. "A merger," he said simply, "through marriage, Shane and April." The words hung in the air between them. A solution as old as business itself, the marriage alliance, joining warring families through bonds stronger than contracts and stockholder agreements. Mr. Damon John studied his scotch, thinking of April's gentle heart, her dreams of fashion design, her quiet strength. "They've never even met properly," he said softly. "They will," Richard replied. "At the right time, in the right way. We'll announce it at the Global Tech Summit next month. Shock our competitors, unite our strengths." The plan began to take shape as the night deepened. They would keep the meeting secret, surprise the world with their announcement. Their children would have time to adjust to the idea, to know each other. The marriage would combine their empires, ending 50 years of warfare and creating an entity strong enough to face the future. Neither man spoke of love, neither mentioned the risk of forcing two young hearts together for business. They were men of their generation, raised to believe that duty came before personal desire. As midnight approached, they stood and shook hands, not as rivals, but as future family. The deal was sealed with nothing more than a handshake and 2 empty glasses of scotch. No lawyers, no contracts, no witnesses. Just 2 old warriors finally laying down their swords. They left separately, each returning to their respective towers to begin preparing for the seismic shift they'd set in motion. The New York skyline sparkled around them, unaware that its 2 greatest business dynasties had just concluded their 50-year war in a quiet room over expensive scotch. In her penthouse apartment, April Damon sketched designs for her future fashion line, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Across town, Shane Walton dined with Hilda at an exclusive restaurant, ignorant of the fate his father had just arranged. The stage was set for a story of power, pride, and unexpected love. The greatest business rivalry in American history was about to transform into something entirely different. A tale of 2 hearts finding each other despite every obstacle. The city slept on, unknowing that tomorrow would bring the first ripples of a change that would reshape the business world forever. In their towers, 2 titans of industry finally slept peacefully, having taken the first step toward saving their empires through the oldest solution in history, the union of their children. Chapter 2. The Secret Summit. Dawn broke over Manhattan, bathing the Walton building in golden light. Shane Walton's private office on the 85th floor offered a commanding view of the city he'd grown up determined to conquer. At 25, he already carried himself with the confidence of a man who'd never known failure. His custom Tom Ford suit fit perfectly against his athletic frame as he reviewed the morning's acquisition reports. A gentle knock interrupted his concentration. "Mr. Walton," his secretary announced. "Your father requests your immediate presence in the main conference room." Shane frowned, checking his Patek Philippe watch, a recent gift to himself after closing a billion-dollar deal. His father never called impromptu meetings, preferring carefully scheduled appointments with clear agendas. Something was different about today. Across town in the Damon Tower, April Damon sat in her modest office, surrounded by sketches of her latest fashion designs. Unlike the stark minimalism that dominated the corporate floors, her space burst with color and creativity. Fashion magazines lay scattered across her desk, their pages marked with sticky notes and inspiration flags. Her adoptive father's personal assistant appeared at her door. "Miss Damon, your father would like to see you in his office immediately." April's heart skipped a beat. Despite the love and security the Damons had given her since adopting her as a baby, these sudden summons always triggered a flicker of anxiety, a remnant of knowing she came into their lives through tragedy, her biological mother's death and father's rejection. In the Walton Building's main conference room, Richard Walton stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silver hair and impeccable posture a testament to old-world power. He turned as Shane entered, studying his son with eyes that had witnessed half a century of corporate warfare. "Son," he began, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything. Last night I met with John Damon." Shane's body tensed instantly. The Damon name had been synonymous with enemy throughout his entire life. "Why would you meet with him, without lawyers, without me?" "Because sometimes, son, the greatest victories come not through war, but through peace." Richard's words hung in the air between them. "We've reached an agreement that will save both our empires." Meanwhile, in Mr. Damon John's office, April sat perched elegantly on the edge of a leather chair, her natural grace evident even in stillness. Her father's office had always intimidated her. Its vast space designed to make visitors feel small, its decor screaming power and authority. "April, my dear," Mr. Damon John began, his voice softer than it ever was in board meetings. "You know, we've always wanted what's best for you. Since the day we adopted you, you've been our greatest blessing." April's throat tightened. Her adoption was rarely mentioned, not out of shame, but out of the complete acceptance the Damons had always shown her. "Father, what's wrong?" Back in the Walton Building, Shane's world was imploding. "Marriage," he practically spat the word, "to April Damon? Have you lost your mind?" "Watch your tone," Richard's voice cracked like a whip. "This isn't just about you. It's about securing the future of everything we've built. While we've been fighting the Damons, younger companies are stealing our market share. We need this alliance." "I'm with Hilda," Shane protested, though even as he said it, he knew how weak it sounded. Hilda Martinez, with her designer wardrobe and insatiable appetite for luxury, was his escape from the corporate world, beautiful, uncomplicated, demanding nothing more than expensive gifts and exclusive restaurant reservations. "Hilda," Richard's tone dripped with disdain, "is not the future of this company. April Damon is brilliant, well-educated, and from a family that understands our world. This merger through marriage will create the most powerful corporation in America." In the Damon Tower, April's reaction was quieter but no less intense. "Marriage to Shane Walton?" Her voice trembled slightly. "But we've never even met properly. And his reputation? Father, they say he's involved with someone else." Mr. Damon John leaned forward, his eyes soft with concern for his daughter. "Sometimes, my dear, duty calls us to greater things than we imagined for ourselves. This union could end 50 years of costly rivalry. It could secure jobs for thousands of employees, create opportunities for innovation we've never dreamed of." April's mind raced. She'd seen Shane Walton from afar at charity galas and business functions, Tall, handsome, arrogant, the tabloids regularly featured him with Hilda Martinez, their romance splashed across page 6 in designer clothes and expensive jewelry. "Do I have a choice?" she asked quietly, though she already knew the answer. The weight of 2 corporate dynasties pressed down on her shoulders. "There's always a choice," her father replied gently. "But I'm asking you to consider what's at stake. Our companies employ hundreds of thousands of people. Our technological innovations shape the future. Together, we could do so much more than we ever could as rivals." Back in the Walton building, Shane's resistance was crumbling under his father's relentless logic. "And if I refuse," he challenged, though his voice had lost its earlier fire. Richard Walton's response was ice cold. "Then you lose everything. Your position, your trust fund, your future with this company. I've indulged your relationship with Hilda, your playboy lifestyle, because I believed you'd grow out of it. Now it's time to become the man this company needs you to be." The threat hung in the air between them, father and son locked in a battle of wills. Shane's mind raced through his options. His entire life had been built around eventually taking control of Walton Industries. Every school, every internship, every business decision had led to this moment. In the Damon Tower, April made her decision with characteristic grace. "I'll do it," she said softly, "for the company, for our employees, for peace between our families." Her heart ached for her dreams of fashion design, but duty called louder. Mr. Damon John rose and embraced his daughter, his eyes suspiciously bright. "You've always made us proud, April. This sacrifice, we'll make sure it's worth it." The announcement would come at the Global Tech Summit next week, a carefully choreographed surprise that would shock the business world. Both families' PR teams would work around the clock to craft the perfect narrative, a love story bridging America's greatest business rivalry, a merger of hearts and corporations. Neither Shane nor April knew that their fathers had met in secret, that their futures had been decided over expensive scotch in a private club room. They would learn that detail much later, when their own story had twisted and turned in ways neither family could have predicted. As the day wore on, both young people retreated to their private spaces to process the news. Shane paced his penthouse apartment, ignoring Hilda's increasingly frantic texts. How could he tell her? What would this mean for them? April sat in her office, absently sketching designs she might never bring to life, wondering what kind of man Shane Walton really was behind his playboy facade. The New York sun set behind the skyscrapers, painting the city in shades of amber and rose. In their respective towers, 2 young people faced the weight of dynasty and duty, their personal dreams sacrificed on the altar of corporate ambition. Neither knew that fate had other plans, that their arranged marriage would spark a love story more powerful than any business merger. Tomorrow would bring the first steps of their new reality. Tomorrow, they would begin the careful dance of appearing in public together, of crafting the illusion of a natural romance. Tomorrow, they would start learning to be partners in the greatest corporate merger in history. But tonight, they were just 2 souls caught in the machinations of power and legacy, their hearts not yet knowing that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with choice, but with duty. The city lights twinkled like stars, witnesses to the unfolding drama that would change not just 2 lives, but the entire landscape of American business forever. Chapter 3. The Heirs. The morning of the Global Tech Summit dawned crisp and clear over Manhattan. In his luxury penthouse apartment, Shane Walton stood before his floor-to-ceiling windows, nursing a glass of scotch despite the early hour. His reflection showed a man at war with himself. Pristinely tailored Tom Ford suit couldn't hide the tension in his shoulders, the storm brewing behind his eyes. His phone buzzed again, another message from Hilda. He'd been avoiding her call since his father's announcement, unable to face the conversation he knew was coming. The screen showed 27 missed calls and 43 text messages. The latest read, "Baby, where are you?" We need to talk about these rumors. Rumors. If only they were just rumors. The reality was far more devastating than anything the gossip columns could conjure. In less than 3 hours, he would stand beside April Damon, the daughter of his family's greatest rival, and announce their engagement to the world. Across town, in her more modest but elegantly appointed apartment, April Damon sat at her vanity, watching her hands tremble slightly as she applied her makeup. The daughter of one of America's wealthiest men lived simply by choice, her space filled with fashion sketches and design materials rather than luxury items. Today, however, she'd chosen her outfit with particular care, a cream-colored Chanel suit that emphasized her natural grace and beauty. Her adoption papers lay open on her desk. She'd spent the night reading them again and again, reminding herself of where she came from. The documents told a story of love and loss, her biological mother's death in childbirth, her biological father's rejection, and the Damons' decision to make her their own. It was a debt she could never repay, and now, perhaps, this arranged marriage was her chance to prove her gratitude. The Global Tech Summit was being held at the Metropolitan Convention Center, its grand ballroom transformed into a showcase of technological innovation. CEOs, venture capitalists, and tech visionaries from around the world gathered to glimpse the future, unaware that the day's biggest news would have nothing to do with technology. Shane arrived first, surrounded by his usual entourage of assistants and security. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his Harvard-polished charm masking the turmoil within. Every handshake, every smile felt like a performance, knowing that in less than an hour, his world would change forever. Mr. Walton, a young reporter from Tech Weekly, caught his arm. Any comment on the rumors about a possible merger with Damon Corporation? Shane's practiced smile never wavered. All announcements will come at the appropriate time, he replied smoothly, though his stomach churned at the words. April's arrival caused a different kind of stir. She moved through the crowd with an unconscious elegance that turned heads, her genuine warmth a stark contrast to the calculated networking that dominated such events. Unlike Shane, who'd been groomed for the corporate spotlight, April had always stayed on the periphery of the business world, more comfortable in design studios than boardrooms. Their first real meeting was carefully orchestrated by their father's PR teams. As April approached the Walton Industries booth, Shane felt his breath catch despite himself. He'd seen her in photos, glimpsed her at events, but up close. She was stunning in a way that had nothing to do with mere beauty. There was a kindness in her eyes, a gentle strength in her bearing that no photograph had captured. Mr. Walton, she greeted him formally, extending her hand. Miss Damon, he replied, taking her hand. The touch sent an unexpected current through both of them, though neither let it show. Their fathers watched from a discreet distance, satisfied with the tableau they presented. The handsome corporate heir and the graceful heiress, a picture-perfect couple for the business world's greatest merger. But reality was more complicated. As Shane held April's hand a fraction longer than necessary, his phone buzzed again in his pocket. Hilda, surely, demanding answers he wasn't ready to give. And behind April's composed smile lay fears she'd never voice. Would this man, known for his playboy lifestyle and arrogant demeanor, break her heart in the name of business? The announcement came at noon. Both families took the stage together, presenting a united front that sent shockwaves through the business world. Mr. Damon John spoke first, his deep voice carrying authority and conviction as he announced not just a merger of companies, but a union of families. Richard Walton followed, laying out the business implications with military precision. But it was when Shane and April stepped forward together that the room erupted in gasps and whispers. The sight of the two heirs standing side by side, holding hands. It was an image that would dominate business news for weeks to come. Love, Shane declared to the assembled press, the lie tasting bitter on his tongue, sometimes finds us in unexpected places. He looked down at April, trying to convey sincerity he didn't feel. When I met April, I knew she was different from anyone I'd ever known. April's response was softer, but somehow more genuine. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind hasn't yet realized, she said, her words carefully chosen to be true while hiding their deeper meaning. The questions came fast and furious. How long have you been dating? When's the wedding? What about your relationship with Hilda Martinez, Mr. Walton? How will this affect the company's competing projects? Their PR teams deflected most queries, but the damage was done. Hilda's name hung in the air like a ghost between them, even as they posed for photographs and accepted congratulations. In a quiet moment backstage, while their fathers handled the business press, Shane and April found themselves alone for the first time. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken thoughts and fears. "I'm sorry," Shane said finally, surprising them both with his sincerity. "This isn't fair to you." April studied him, seeing past the corporate mask to the conflict beneath. "Life isn't always fair," she replied softly, "but we can choose how we handle what it gives us." Her quiet dignity made him feel ashamed of his earlier resentment. This woman, who carried herself with such grace despite the circumstances, deserved better than a reluctant groom still entangled with another woman. "Hilda," he began, but April held up a hand. "You don't owe me explanations," she said. "We both know why we're here. This is business, nothing more." But even as she spoke the words, something shifted between them. A recognition, perhaps, that they were both prisoners of their family's ambitions, both sacrificing personal dreams for dynasty and duty. The rest of the day passed in a blur of interviews, photographs, and congratulations. Stock prices for both companies soared as the market responded to the unexpected merger. Competitors scrambled to understand the implications. Analysts praised the strategic brilliance, and social media exploded with speculation about the young couple. By evening, Shane's phone had finally gone silent. Hilda's last message, a single word: "Goodbye." It should have hurt more than it did. Instead, he felt a strange sense of relief, as if a weight he hadn't known he was carrying had been lifted. April retreated to her apartment, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of the day. Her design sketches still covered the walls, dreams of a fashion career now overshadowed by corporate responsibility. Yet as she thought of Shane's moment of vulnerability backstage, she wondered if perhaps there was more to him than his playboy reputation suggested. In their respective homes, both heirs grappled with their new reality. Shane poured another scotch, trying to reconcile his image of April, her quiet strength, her unexpected wisdom, with his predetermined resentment of all things Damond. April sat at her design table, sketching absently, her mind replaying every interaction with Shane, searching for clues to the man behind the corporate facade. Neither knew that across town, in a private dining room at the Metropolitan Club, their fathers were raising glasses to their success. The merger was proceeding exactly as planned, two dynasties united, a 50-year war ending, not with destruction, but with union. But life rarely follows even the most carefully laid plans. As the New York night deepened, two young people lay awake in their separate homes, their thoughts turning surprisingly often to each other. Perhaps it was the shared weight of their situation, the recognition of a fellow prisoner of duty and expectation. Or perhaps it was something else, something neither was ready to acknowledge. The media would call it a modern fairy tale, the joining of two great business empires through love. The reality was far more complex. Two hearts caught in a web of corporate ambition, family duty, and unexpected attraction. As they drifted finally towards sleep, both Shane and April wondered what tomorrow would bring, not knowing that their arranged marriage would lead them down paths neither could have predicted. The city lights twinkled like stars, keeping their secrets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new opportunities for two hearts to either grow together or break apart. But for now, in the quiet of night, two heirs to America's greatest business rivalry dreamed unexpected dreams of each other, their hearts beginning a journey their minds hadn't yet accepted. Chapter 4. The Announcement. The news broke like a thunderclap across the global business landscape. Every major financial network interrupted their regular programming with breaking news alerts. CNN, Bloomberg, CNBC, all leading with the same stunning headline: Breaking: Damon and Walton empires to merge through marriage alliance. The Damon Towers Grand Conference Room, with its sweeping views of Manhattan, had been transformed into a media center. Journalists from around the world packed the space, their cameras and microphones creating a forest of technology before the ornate podium. The tension in the room was electric. No one had seen this coming. Mr. Damon John stood before the mirror in his private office, adjusting his tie one final time. Today's Armani suit was chosen with particular care, dark navy that projected both power and approachability. Beside him, April sat quietly, her cream-colored designer dress making her look both elegant and vulnerable. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, the only sign of her inner turmoil. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice gentler than usual. April met his eyes in the mirror. "Yes, father." The lie came easily. How could anyone be ready for this? In the Walton building across town, a similar scene played out. Richard Walton paced the length of his office while Shane stood at the window, his jaw set in a hard line. The young heir's phone had finally stopped buzzing, Hilda's last message still unread. "Remember," Richard's voice cut through the tension, "this is more than just a marriage. This is the future of both companies. The whole world is watching." Shane's response was a curt nod. His mind was a storm of emotions, anger at being forced into this, resentment toward April simply for existing, and beneath it all, a nagging guilt about Hilda. The press conference was scheduled for exactly noon. As the hour approached, both families made their way to the Damon Towers conference room. The photographers' cameras clicked frantically as they entered. First, Mr. Damon John and his wife, then Richard Walton and his, and finally, the young couple themselves. April's entrance caused a stir. She moved with natural grace, her beauty enhanced by an inner dignity that the cameras eagerly captured. Shane followed, tall and handsome in his bespoke suit, playing his part of the devoted fiancé perfectly despite the war raging inside him. Mr. Damon John stepped to the podium first. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We're here to announce not just a business merger, but a union of families that will reshape the future of American industry." The room erupted in questions, but he raised his hand for silence. For 50 years, the Damon Corporation and Walton Industries have been rivals. Today, we become family. Richard Walton joined him at the podium, the two titans of industry standing together for the first time in public memory. "Through the marriage of my son, Shane Walton, and April Damon, our companies will unite to create the most powerful technological and business entity in the world." The questions came rapid fire. When did this relationship begin? What about the ongoing patent disputes? "Mr. Walton, any comment on your son's previous relationship with Hilda Martinez?" Shane stepped forward, his media training kicking in despite his turmoil. "April and I have known each other through business circles for years," he lied smoothly. "Sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected places." April moved to his side, allowing him to take her hand. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through both of them, a current of awareness neither had anticipated. She smiled for the cameras, the perfect picture of a woman in love, though her heart was racing beneath her calm exterior. "We're very happy," she said softly, her voice carrying naturally across the room. The sincerity in her tone surprised even Shane. She was either a better actress than he'd imagined, or there was more to her than he'd assumed. The business press demanded details about the merger, stock exchanges, board positions, corporate structure. But the society photographers were focused on the young couple, capturing every small interaction, every glance, every subtle touch. One veteran reporter from the Wall Street Journal asked the question everyone was thinking: how do you overcome 50 years of corporate rivalry to find love? Before Shane could craft another smooth lie, April spoke. "Some things are more powerful than old rivalries," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Sometimes the heart sees what the mind cannot." Her words struck Shane like a physical blow. In that moment, looking down at her as she defended their fraudulent relationship with such grace, he felt the first crack in his resentment. This woman, who had every right to be as angry as he was about their arranged marriage, was handling it with a dignity he couldn't match. The press conference continued, but the dynamic between them had shifted subtly. Shane found himself watching April more closely, noticing the slight tremor in her hand when difficult questions came, the way she held herself with quiet strength despite the pressure. After the formal announcements, the families moved to the Damon Towers Executive Lounge for a more intimate reception with key media figures. April was immediately surrounded by society reporters, all eager to hear about wedding plans and romantic details. Shane stood at the bar, nursing a scotch and watching her handle the attention with natural grace. A senior reporter from Forbes approached him. "Quite a catch, Mr. Walton," the reporter nodded toward April. "Though I have to say, this comes as quite a surprise given your previous entanglements." Shane's grip tightened on his glass. "The past is the past," he said firmly, his tone ending that line of questioning. Across the room, April was asked about Hilda. Her response was diplomatic. "I prefer to focus on the future, not the past. Shane and I are looking forward to building something meaningful together." As the afternoon wore on, both families worked the room with practiced skill. The story was carefully shaped, a natural romance that had blossomed despite family rivalry, leading to a merger that would benefit both companies. The financial press ate it up, already speculating about the combined company's potential market dominance. But in quiet moments, when the cameras weren't watching, the strain showed. Shane disappeared to the balcony several times, his phone in his hand, though he never made any calls. April maintained her smile, but her eyes held a sadness that the more observant reporters noticed. As evening approached, the media finally began to disperse. The story would dominate tomorrow's headlines, but for now, the performance was over. In the empty conference room, April finally allowed herself to sink into a chair, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. Shane found her there, 2 glasses of champagne in his hands. He offered her one wordlessly, and she accepted with a small nod. "You were good today," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Better than I was." April looked up at him, surprise flickering across her face at the compliment. "We all do what we have to do," she replied softly. "Is that what this is to you? Duty?" She considered the question carefully. "Isn't that what it is to you?" Before he could answer, their fathers entered the room, both men riding high on the success of their announcement. The stock market had responded enthusiastically to the news. Both companies' shares were up over 15%. "Perfect," Richard Walton declared. "Absolutely perfect. The media's eating it up, the market's responding. This is everything we hope for." Mr. Damon John nodded in agreement. "Now we move to phase 2. The engagement party next week, then the wedding in 3 months. We need to keep this momentum going." Shane and April exchanged a glance, both recognizing the machinery of corporate ambition that was now controlling their lives. But something had changed between them during the long day of pretense, a mutual understanding perhaps, or at least a recognition of their shared predicament. As they parted ways that evening, Shane found himself watching April's retreating figure with new eyes. She wasn't what he'd expected, not the corporate princess he'd assumed she'd be, not the enemy he'd prepared himself to resent. In her car, heading home, April allowed herself to think about Shane. Despite his initial coldness, she'd seen moments of something else today, a complexity that suggested there was more to him than his playboy reputation suggested. The city lights blurred past their windows as they headed to their separate homes, both lost in thought about the day's events and what the future might hold. Neither could have guessed how their carefully arranged merger of convenience would evolve, or how their hearts would betray all their careful plans. In their respective offices, their fathers raised glasses to their success, believing they had orchestrated the perfect business solution. But they had forgotten one crucial factor: the unpredictable nature of the human heart, and its tendency to rebel against even the most carefully laid plans. Chapter 5. Shattered Glass. The morning after the press conference, Shane Walton's fury finally erupted. The carefully constructed facade of the happy couple crumbled in the privacy of his father's study at the Walton mansion. Sunlight streamed through centuries-old stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows across the Persian carpet as Shane paced like a caged tiger. "Have you completely lost your mind?" His voice rose with each word, echoing off the wood-paneled walls. "How could you do this without even asking me? I'm not some pawn you can move around your corporate chessboard." Richard Walton sat behind his massive mahogany desk, watching his son's outburst with cold composure. The morning papers lay spread before him, their headlines celebrating the unexpected merger and romance. His crystal tumbler of scotch remained untouched. It was barely 9 a.m., but today warranted an exception. "Are you quite finished?" Richard's voice cut through Shane's tirade like steel through silk. "Sit down." "I will not sit down." Shane grabbed a crystal paperweight from his father's desk, hurling it against the wall. It shattered spectacularly, sending fragments of crystal raining onto the carpet. "You've arranged my entire life like I'm some sort of puppet, and now you're trying to force me to marry a woman I barely know. That's enough." Richard's fist slammed onto the desk, the rare display of emotion silencing his son momentarily. "You want to talk about arrangements? Let's talk about how I arranged your admission to Harvard, how I arranged your first vice presidency, how I arranged to cover up that scandal with the senator's daughter 3 years ago." Shane's face paled slightly at the mention of that particular incident, but his anger didn't diminish. "That's different. This is my life, my heart." "Your heart?" Richard's laugh was bitter. "You mean your relationship with Hilda Martinez, that gold digger who's been bleeding you dry with her endless demands for gifts and trips? Don't you dare talk about Hilda like that." Shane's voice cracked with emotion. "She loves me for who I am, not for my position or my money." "Does she?" Richard stood slowly, his presence filling the room. "Then why did she accept a dinner invitation from James Chen last week? Or was she networking when she spent last weekend on Marcus Davidson's yacht?" The color drained from Shane's face. "You're lying. You're just trying to manipulate me." "Am I?" Richard pulled a folder from his desk drawer, tossing it onto the desk. Photographs spilled out, surveillance shots of Hilda with various wealthy men, each image a dagger to Shane's heart. "I've had her watched for months. She's playing you, son, just like she's playing half a dozen other wealthy men." Shane picked up the photos with trembling hands, his world crumbling around him. Each image told a story he didn't want to believe. Hilda laughing on a yacht, dining in exclusive restaurants, shopping with different men. His Hilda, who'd promised she only had eyes for him. "This doesn't change anything," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "I won't marry April Damon. I can't." "You can, and you will." Richard's tone left no room for argument. "Unless you want to find yourself cut off completely. No trust fund, no position in the company, no access to any family resources. You'll be out on the street with nothing but your Harvard degree and your wounded pride." "You wouldn't dare." But even as Shane said it, he knew his father would. Richard Walton hadn't built an empire by bluffing. "Try me." Richard sat back down, picking up his scotch. "The merger announcement has already been made. The markets are responding positively. Backing out now would destroy both companies' stock values and make us look like fools. The wedding will happen in 3 months. Shane collapsed into a leather chair, the fight draining out of him. "And what about April? Does she have any say in this?" "April Damon understands duty and family obligation better than you ever have." Richard's voice held a note of approval that stung Shane deeply. "She's accepted this arrangement with grace and dignity. Perhaps you could learn something from her." "Grace and dignity?" Shane laughed bitterly. "She's probably just thrilled to marry into the Walton fortune. Another gold digger just like Hilda." "Watch your mouth!" Richard's voice turned dangerous. "April Damon is nothing like your Hilda. She's been raised in our world, understands our responsibilities, and unlike your current paramour, she has her own fortune and a genuine interest in business beyond shopping and parties." Shane stood abruptly, unable to bear any more. "I need some air." "Before you go," Richard called after him, "remember this. You have until tonight to break things off with Hilda properly. If you don't, I'll have security do it for you, and believe me, you don't want that kind of scandal." Shane stormed out of the study, slamming the heavy door behind him. The sound echoed through the mansion like a gunshot, making the staff scatter nervously. He made his way to the garage, grabbing the keys to his Aston Martin. As he roared through the streets of Manhattan, his phone buzzed continuously. Hilda, no doubt, having seen the morning news. He couldn't face her yet, couldn't bear to confirm what his father's photos had suggested. The betrayal cut deep, not just from Hilda, but from his father as well. Without conscious thought, he found himself driving toward the Damon Tower. April would be there, probably celebrating her triumph with her family. The thought made his blood boil. He pulled into the private garage, his name already added to the security clearance list. The elevator ride to the executive floor gave him time to seethe. By the time he reached April's office, his anger had crystallized into cold determination. He burst through her door without knocking, ready to confront her. The sight that greeted him stopped him in his tracks. April sat at her desk, surrounded not by celebration, but by fashion sketches and fabric swatches. Her eyes were red-rimmed, though she quickly wiped away any trace of tears at his entrance. "Can I help you, Mr. Walton?" Her voice was steady, professional, giving no indication of her emotional state. "Drop the act," he snapped, but his voice held less venom than he'd intended. "This whole thing, it's a joke. A corporate arrangement dressed up as romance." April stood slowly, her dignity evident in every movement. "You're right, it is an arrangement, but that doesn't mean we have to make each other miserable." "Doesn't it?" He moved closer, trying to intimidate her with his presence. "You're getting everything you want, the Walton name, the merged companies, the society wedding of the year." Her laugh surprised him, short, bitter, and entirely genuine. "Everything I want? I want to be a fashion designer, Mr. Walton. I want to create something of my own, not inherit someone else's empire. But we don't always get what we want, do we?" The sincerity in her voice made him pause. This wasn't the calculating social climber he'd expected. There was real pain in her eyes, real dreams being sacrificed. "Why did you agree to this?" he asked, his anger deflating slightly. The same reason you did, she replied softly. Because sometimes duty to family outweighs personal desire. Because sometimes the price of saying no is too high to pay. Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. Shane found himself studying her with new eyes, noting the fashion magazines on her desk, the half-finished sketches, the evidence of a passion being set aside for family obligation. "I won't love you," he said finally, the words coming out harsher than he'd intended. "I'm not asking you to." April's voice remained steady. "All I'm asking is that we treat each other with respect. We're both trapped in this situation. We can either make it bearable or make it hell." The wisdom in her words surprised him, though he wouldn't admit it. Instead, he turned to leave, pausing at the door. "This doesn't change anything. I'm still in love with someone else." "I know," April replied quietly, "and I'm sorry for that. But Mr. Walton, Shane, you might want to ask yourself why your father is so certain this marriage needs to happen now. Why he's so intent on separating you from certain influences." Her words followed him back to his car, adding to the turmoil in his mind. The photographs in his father's study, April's quiet dignity, the weight of family obligation, it was all too much to process. As he drove through the city, Shane realized that his world had shattered like that crystal paperweight. All that remained was to see what shape the pieces would take when they finally settled. In her office, April returned to her sketches, allowing herself one more moment of grief for the dreams she was setting aside. Neither of them knew that their confrontation had planted the first seeds of understanding, the first hint that perhaps there was more to each other than they'd assumed. The sun continued its journey across the Manhattan sky, indifferent to the drama unfolding in the lives below. In two separate towers, two young people grappled with duty, desire, and the dawning realization that their arranged marriage might be more complicated than either had imagined. Chapter 6. The Promise. The Walton family estate blazed with light against the darkening Manhattan sky, its 5 acres of manicured gardens prepared for the first official gathering of the newly engaged couple. After Shane's explosive confrontation with his father in Chapter 5, where he'd been threatened with disinheritance, this evening would set the tone for their public relationship. April arrived with her adoptive parents, her cream-colored Valentino gown making her look like an angel descended into their midst. She knew what awaited her. Shane's anger at being forced into this arrangement would surely find its target in her. She wasn't wrong. "Well, if it isn't our newest acquisition," Shane's voice dripped with sarcasm as he approached, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Tell me, April, how does it feel to be traded like a corporate asset, though I suppose you're used to being handed from family to family?" The cruel reference to her adoption made several socialites hide smirks behind their champagne glasses. April maintained her composure, years of hiding her pain serving her well. "The gardens are beautiful, Shane," she deflected gracefully. "Yes. Generations of real Waltons have tended these grounds." He emphasized the word real with deliberate cruelty. "People who earned their place here, not charity cases who got lucky." Richard Walton appeared at his son's elbow, his grip warning. "Show April the rose garden, son." It wasn't a suggestion. Shane led April toward the French doors, his touch on her elbow possessive rather than gentle. As they stepped into the garden, the sweet scent of roses couldn't mask the bitterness between them. "Let me make something perfectly clear." Shane's voice was low and intense. "I swear, I will never accept you as my wife, never. I will never touch you, never acknowledge you as anything more than a business convenience. This marriage is a transaction, nothing more." April's calm finally cracked. "Why are you being so cruel? I didn't ask for this either." "Didn't you?" He laughed harshly. the perfect solution to your identity crisis, finally becoming a real member of high society instead of an adopted outsider playing dress-up. The series of required social events that followed became stages for Shane's escalating cruelty. At their engagement photo shoot, while photographers adjusted lighting, he whispered cutting remarks about her fashion design dreams. Playing with dresses while the real business people work. How quaint, though I suppose when you've been rejected by your own blood, you need something to feel special about. During the charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum, he made sure to parade Hilda in front of April. "This is what a real woman looks like," he announced to nearby guests. "Not some charity case trying to prove she belongs." The wedding planning meetings were particularly brutal. When April suggested incorporating sustainable elements into the ceremony, Shane's response cut deep. "Still trying to prove you're worth something? That you deserve to be here? You don't. You're just convenient. A walking, talking merger agreement. Nothing more." At their engagement party, held in the Damon Towers Grand Ballroom, he saved his cruelest words for when they were surrounded by guests. "You know why they really adopted you?" he said, champagne glass in hand. "Because it looked good for their corporate image, a charitable act to write off on their taxes. Just like this marriage, a business transaction dressed up as something meaningful." Through each encounter, April maintained her dignity. Every cruel word, every deliberate jab about her adoption or her dreams of fashion design, she absorbed silently. Her quiet strength in the face of his cruelty would later haunt Shane, especially after discovering Hilda's true nature in the chapters to come. The final pre-wedding meeting in the Damon Towers conference room marked the peak of his calculated cruelty. "I could never love someone like you," he declared coldly. "You're not loyal, you're not genuine, you're just an opportunist who got lucky. At least Hilda is honest about what she wants." April's response was quiet, but cutting. "And what exactly does Hilda want, Shane? Have you ever really asked yourself that question?" Her implication about Hilda's true nature enraged him. He grabbed her arm, pulling her close. "Don't you dare question my relationship with Hilda. I will never forgive you if you speak against her again." April met his gaze steadily. "Someone needs to tell you the truth, even if you're not ready to hear it." "Truth?" His laugh was bitter. "The truth is that you're nothing but a replacement child. Your own father didn't want you. The Damons took you in out of pity, and now you're being used to seal a business deal. That's all you'll ever be." April extracted herself from his grip with quiet dignity. "You're wrong about so many things, Shane. Someday you'll realize that. I just hope it's not too late when you do." As she walked away, Shane felt something unexpected, a flicker of admiration for her strength. He pushed it aside quickly, but the seed was planted. This woman, who absorbed his cruelty with such grace, who maintained her dignity despite his best efforts to break her, was something different from what he'd expected. The night ended with possibility hanging in the air, not of love, not yet, but of recognition. Shane had promised never to accept her as his wife, never to touch her, but watching her leave with her head held high, he felt the first crack in his certainty. Neither knew that these pre-wedding encounters, painful as they were laying the groundwork for their eventual transformation. Each cruel word Shane spoke would return to haunt him. Each moment of dignity April displayed would later prove her true worth. As the wedding approached, their path was set. Shane's cruelty would continue until that fateful wedding night when April's beauty would shatter all his promises. But for now they remained locked in their roles, the cruel heir and the dignified adopted daughter, each playing their part in a drama neither had chosen, but both would be transformed by. Chapter 7. Hidden Pain. The weeks leading up to the wedding became a delicate dance of public appearances and private torment. Each charity gala, each business function, each society event required Shane and April to perform their roles as the perfect engaged couple while their hearts waged separate wars. At the annual Metropolitan Museum Charity Ball, Shane watched April from across the grand ballroom. She wore a midnight blue gown that made her look like a dream come to life, charming everyone around her with her natural grace. His grip tightened on his champagne glass as he saw how easily she fit into his world, how effortlessly she carried the Damon name despite not being born to it. "Your fiancée is quite the social butterfly." Hilda's voice cut through his thoughts like a blade. She'd returned from Europe, more beautiful and dangerous than ever, in a red dress that left little to the imagination. "What are you doing here, Hilda?" Shane's voice was cold, though his heart raced at her proximity. "I was invited, darling. Some of us actually earned our place in society." Her eyes fixed on April. Though others seemed to have lucked their way in through adoption, Shane's response surprised even himself. "Don't talk about her like that." Hilda's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. "Defending her already? How sweet. Does she know you're still meeting me in private?" The lie hung between them. They hadn't met since the engagement announcement, but Hilda's words were calculated to be overheard by nearby guests. The whispers would start within minutes. Across the room, April maintained her serene smile despite having seen Hilda's arrival. The weight of her secret adoption felt heavier tonight, watching Shane with the woman he truly loved. No one knew that she spent her nights reading and rereading her adoption papers, trying to understand why her biological father had rejected her so completely that the Damons had to step in. "April, darling." Mrs. Wellington, one of New York's most notorious gossips, touched her arm. "How do you feel about Hilda's return? It must be so difficult knowing Shane's true love is still in the picture." April's response was graceful as ever. "Shane's past is his own, Mrs. Wellington. I'm focused on our future." But the older woman pressed on. "Yes, but surely you must worry. After all, with your background, you can't really compete with old money like Hilda." The subtle dig at her adopted status felt like a knife to the heart, but April's smile never wavered. She'd learned early that showing pain only invited more cruelty. Shane watched the interaction from afar, seeing something in April's posture that others missed. A slight stiffening of her shoulders, a barely perceptible tremor in her hands. For the first time he wondered about the strength it took to face such subtle cruelty with dignity. "She'll never belong in our world," Hilda whispered, pressing against him suggestively. "She's not like us, Shane. She's just playing a part." The irony of Hilda criticizing anyone else for playing a part wasn't lost on him. The photographs his father had shown him flashed through his mind. Hilda with other men, always calculating, always performing. "Excuse me," he said abruptly, leaving Hilda mid-sentence. His feet carried him across the ballroom to April's side. "Dance with me," he said, not quite a request, but not quite a demand. April took his offered hand, letting him lead her to the dance floor. The orchestra was playing a waltz, and they moved together with practiced ease, another skill drilled into them since childhood. "I saw Hilda's here," April said softly, her voice free of accusation. "She means nothing to me," Shane replied automatically, then wondered why he felt the need to say it. "You don't have to lie." April's smile remained perfect for their audience. "I know you love her. I've accepted that our marriage will never be real." Her words echoed his own cruel promise from the garden party, but somehow they hurt to hear from her lips. "You don't know anything about my feelings, don't I?" April met his eyes for the first time that evening. "I know what it's like to want something you can't have, to love someone who doesn't love you back." The vulnerability in her voice caught him off guard. "Your biological father," he said, the pieces clicking into place. April tensed in his arms but didn't pull away. They had an audience to consider. "How did you know?" "I make it my business to know everything about the Diamond Empire," he said, but his voice lacked its usual edge, "including the fact that you were adopted after your mother died in childbirth and your father refused to claim you." April's step faltered slightly, but Shane's strong lead kept them moving smoothly. "Is that why you're so cruel to me? Because I'm not a real Diamond?" "No," Shane replied honestly, surprising them both. "I'm cruel because you make me feel things I don't want to feel." The music ended before April could respond. They separated, maintaining their public smile as applause filled the ballroom. But something had shifted between them, a crack in the careful walls they'd built. Later that night, Shane found April alone on the museum's balcony. She stood looking out over the city lights, her profile etched in moonlight. "Your father," he said quietly, joining her at the railing. "He was a fool." April turned to him, surprise evident in her eyes. "What?" "Any man who could reject his own child, especially one like you, is a fool." Shane's words were gruff but sincere. "Why are you being kind to me?" April asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "Because," Shane struggled with the words, "maybe I'm tired of being cruel." The moment hung between them, fragile as spun glass. Then Hilda's laugh floated out from the ballroom, shattering it. "Go to her," April said softly. "I can handle the gossips alone." But Shane didn't move. "You shouldn't have to." They stood in silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Neither spoke of the moment they'd shared during their dance, or the strange new understanding growing between them. Inside the ballroom, Hilda watched them through narrowed eyes, already plotting her next move. The gossips whispered behind their hands, creating new stories about the adopted daughter and the reluctant groom. But on the balcony, Shane and April found a moment of peace in their shared pain. Her secret of adoption, his confusion about Hilda, the weight of their family's expectations, all of it seemed lighter somehow when shared. As the night wore on, Shane found himself watching April with new eyes. Her grace wasn't an act, he realized. Her kindness wasn't a performance. She'd built herself into something remarkable, despite being rejected at birth, while he'd been handed everything and still managed to be cruel. The revelation unsettled him. It was easier when he could dismiss her as an opportunist, a social climber using the Damon name to rise above her origins. The truth, that she was perhaps the most genuine person in their glittering, false world, threatened everything he thought he knew. By the time they left the ball, the gossips had new fodder for discussion. Not just Hilda's return or April's adoption, but the way Shane had stayed by April's side for the rest of the evening, his hand protective at her back, his eyes challenging anyone who dared whisper about her background. In their separate cars heading home, both Shane and April reflected on the evening's revelations. April touched her hand where Shane's had rested during their dance, wondering if his moment of kindness was just another act. Shane stared at his phone, ignoring Hilda's messages, remembering the vulnerability in April's eyes when he mentioned her biological father. The city wrapped around them like a blanket of lights, hiding secrets and nurturing possibilities. Neither knew that tonight had marked a turning point, the first crack in the walls they'd built around their hearts. The first hint that their arranged marriage might become something more than a business transaction. As midnight struck, April finally allowed herself to cry in the privacy of her bedroom, releasing the pain of old rejections and new hopes. Across town, Shane sat in his darkened study, holding a glass of scotch, and wondering why defending April from Hilda had felt so right when everything else in his life felt so wrong. The night held their secrets close, as New York's elite retired to dream of scandals and social climbing, but in two separate corners of the city, two hearts began to question everything they thought they knew about love, duty, and the power of shared pain to bridge even the widest of gaps. Chapter 8. The Wedding Night. The Plaza Hotel's royal suite had hosted countless society weddings, but none quite like this. As the last notes of the reception faded away and the guests departed, Shane Walton stood alone in the opulent bedroom, bow tie undone, jacket discarded. The business merger of the century had been completed with exchange of rings and vows, but now came the moment he'd been dreading. The wedding night. His promise echoed in his mind. "I swear I will never accept you as my wife, never touch you." Words spoken in anger weeks ago, yet they haunted him now as he waited for April to emerge from the dressing room. The wedding itself had been a masterpiece of social theatre, every detail calculated to present the perfect image of two dynasties uniting. April had been breathtaking in her custom-designed gown, moving through the ceremony with a grace that made even the most critical society matrons fall silent in admiration. But now, alone in the suite, Shane felt his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. The scotch in his hand, his fourth of the evening, wasn't helping as much as he'd hoped. The soft click of the dressing room door made him turn. His glass slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering on the marble floor. April stood in the doorway, a vision in ivory silk. Her wedding gown had been stunning, but this was something else entirely. The delicate negligee floated around her like a dream, her beauty enhanced by a vulnerability he'd never seen before. For the first time in his life, Shane Walton found himself completely speechless. April's hands twisted nervously in the silk. "We don't have to. I know what you promised, what you said about never touching me." Shane stepped forward, barely noticing the broken glass crunching under his shoes. All his carefully prepared speeches, all his plans to maintain emotional distance, evaporated in the face of her beauty. "April?" Her name came out as a whisper. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with a gentleness that surprised them both. She trembled at his touch, her eyes meeting his. In them, he saw not the calculated seduction he'd expected, but genuine emotion, fear, hope, and something deeper he wasn't ready to name. "You're beautiful," he said, the words inadequate but sincere. I didn't what?" April's voice was soft, encouraging. "Didn't let myself see you," he admitted. "Really see you." His hand slid into her hair, releasing it from its elegant updo. Dark waves cascaded over her shoulders, and Shane felt something inside him break. All his resistance, all his promises to never accept her, crumbled in the face of this moment. Their first kiss was hesitant, questioning, nothing like the polite peck they'd shared at the altar for the cameras. This was real, raw, filled with all the emotion they'd been denying for weeks. April pulled back slightly, searching his face. "Shane, you don't have to." He silenced her with another kiss, deeper this time, more urgent. His hands traced the silk covering her shoulders, her back, learning the curves he'd sworn never to touch. "I want to," he breathed against her lips. "God help me, I want to." The night became a blur of sensation and discovery. Every touch, every kiss, erased another layer of resistance between them. Shane found himself mapping April's body with reverent hands, amazed by her responses, by the way she seemed to fit perfectly against him. Later, as moonlight filtered through the suite's windows, April lay curled in Shane's arms, her head resting on his chest. Neither spoke, afraid to break the spell that had transformed their business arrangement into something more intimate. "Why didn't you fight back?" Shane asked finally, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "All those times I was cruel to you, why did you just accept it?" April was quiet for a long moment. "Because I understood your pain," she said finally. being forced into something, feeling like you have no choice. I've lived with that feeling since I learned I was adopted, that my biological father rejected me. Shane's arms tightened around her protectively. He was a fool, he repeated his words from the ball, but with more conviction now. Maybe, April's voice held a trace of old pain, but it taught me something important. Sometimes the family you choose is more real than the family you're born into. Sometimes the love that grows slowly, quietly, is stronger than the love that burns hot and fast. Her words hit Shane like a physical blow. He thought of Hilda, of their passionate but ultimately shallow relationship. Then he thought of April's quiet strength, her dignity in the face of his cruelty, the way she'd slowly worked her way past his defenses. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling insufficient. "For everything I said, everything I did." April raised herself on one elbow, looking down at him. In the moonlight, her beauty took his breath away again. "Are you sorry for tonight?" "No," he answered immediately, surprising himself with his vehemence. "Tonight was real, more real than anything has felt in a long time." She smiled then, a genuine smile that lit up her whole face. Shane found himself smiling back, reaching up to trace her lips with his thumb. "What happens now?" April asked softly. "Now." Shane pulled her back down into his arms. "We stop letting the past dictate our future. Stop letting other people's expectations control us." They made love again, slower this time, with a tenderness that brought tears to April's eyes. Each touch was a promise, each kiss an apology for past cruelty and a hope for future kindness. As dawn began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, they lay tangled in the silk sheets, neither quite ready to face the reality waiting outside their suite. "Your father," April said suddenly, "he'll expect us to move into the Walton mansion." Shane stroked her hair thoughtfully. "What if we didn't? What if we found our own place? Something that's just ours, not part of either family's empire?" April raised her head, surprise evident in her expression. "You'd do that? Break with tradition?" "I think," Shane said slowly, "it's time I started making my own traditions, with you." The sun rose over Manhattan, finding them still wrapped in each other's arms, planning a future neither had imagined possible just hours before. The business merger that had brought them together seemed less important now than the merger of their hearts. But outside their sanctuary, the world waited with its own plans. Hilda's plotting, family expectations, corporate politics, all would test this newfound connection between them. For now, though, they had this moment. This night when promises made in anger were broken by the power of unexpected love, when two hearts forced together by duty discovered a connection deeper than either had dreamed possible. As the city began to wake around them, Shane and April held on to their private paradise for a few moments longer. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but they would face them together, stronger for having discovered that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with broken promises and end with new ones, made not out of duty, but out of choice. Chapter 9. The morning after dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the plaza's honeymoon suite in shades of gold and rose. Scattered rose petals from their wedding night still decorated the floor, and champagne glasses sat half empty on the bedside table, silent witnesses to the passion they'd shared just hours before. April woke slowly, her body still tingling from Shane's touches. The silk sheets held his warmth, though his side of the bed was empty. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember. His tender kisses, the way he'd held her like she was precious, the soft words he'd whispered in the dark. How different he'd been from the cold corporate warrior she'd known before. She found him fully dressed in a fresh suit, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse suite. His reflection in the glass showed a face she'd hoped never to see again. Hard, distant, the tender lover of last night replaced by something cold and unreachable. "Good morning," she ventured softly, pulling his discarded dress shirt around her shoulders for modesty. The fabric still held his scent, making her heart ache with the memory of their intimacy. "Is it?" His voice could have frozen fire. He didn't turn from the window. "We need to discuss last night." April's heart stuttered in her chest. She'd heard that tone before, in boardrooms when he was about to destroy a competitor. Never had she imagined hearing it directed at her, not after the way he'd held her, touched her, made love to her through the night. "What about it?" She fought to keep her voice steady. Now he turned, his face a mask of corporate indifference. "Let's be perfectly clear about something. Yes, you're beautiful. Yes, last night was physically satisfying. But don't delude yourself into thinking it meant anything more than that." Each word struck like a physical blow. April wrapped his shirt tighter around herself, as if the fabric could shield her heart from his cruelty. "Shane," she started, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. "No, you need to hear this." He moved closer, his cologne, once intoxicating, now seeming to choke her. "You're beautiful and enjoyable, but you're not Hilda. You'll never be Hilda. Let's not pretend this is anything more than what it is, a business arrangement with benefits." The casual comparison to Hilda, delivered so coldly after their night of passion, made April's knees weak. She gripped the back of a chair for support. "She's using you." The words escaped before she could stop them, fueled by months of watching Hilda's manipulations. "Hilda doesn't love you, Shane. She only loves your money, your position." "Don't you dare!" He crossed the space between them in 3 angry strides, his face transformed by fury. "What do you know about love? You're just an adopted charity case who got lucky. The Damons took you in out of pity, and now you think you can judge someone like Hilda?" April staggered back as if he'd slapped her. Of all the cruel cards he could have played, he'd chosen the one that cut deepest, her adoption, her deepest vulnerability. "How can you be like this?" Her voice cracked with pain. "Last night you were different. You were tender, real. The way you touched me, the things you said. I slept with my wife." His laugh was bitter, ugly. "That's what husbands do. It doesn't mean anything more than fulfilling a marital duty. Did you actually think one night of good sex would make me forget who you really are?" Tears burned behind her eyes, but April refused to let them fall. She'd spent years perfecting the art of hiding pain. First as an adopted child trying to prove herself worthy, then as the daughter of a business titan learning to navigate corporate politics. "Get out." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Excuse me?" His eyebrows rose in mock surprise. "Get out of my room." Steel entered her tone. "If I'm just a duty to be fulfilled, an obligation to be met, then get out. Go back to your precious Hilda." Shane's face darkened dangerously. "This is my suite, paid for by my family. If anyone's leaving, it's you." "Fine." April moved to gather her scattered clothes, her movements precise despite her trembling hands. "I'll go. But remember this moment, Shane. Remember how you chose to destroy something real because you couldn't let go of your pride and your obsession with a woman who only wants your money." "Don't flatter yourself," he sneered, though something flickered in his eyes. "Doubt? Regret? Nothing was destroyed because nothing real existed. You're just convenient, a corporate merger with a pretty face and a willing body." She disappeared into the bathroom, emerging minutes later fully dressed in her clothes from the night before. Her hair was perfectly smoothed, her makeup flawless, the armor of a woman who'd learned early that showing weakness only invited more pain. Shane stood at his phone, already texting, probably Hilda. The sight made April's heart constrict, remembering how those same fingers had traced paths of fire across her skin just hours ago. "Don't bother coming to the Walton mansion," he said without looking up. "I'll have your things sent wherever you're going." Don't worry. Her voice could have cut diamonds. I never planned to live in a house where I wasn't wanted. Some of us haven't forgotten what it's like to be rejected. That made him look up, something complicated crossing his face. Where will you go? That stopped being your concern the moment you compared me to your precious Hilda. She moved to the door, her head held high. Enjoy your real love, Shane. I hope she's worth destroying your chance at something genuine. April ... For a moment, his voice softened, making her heart leap traitorously. No. She held up a hand. You don't get to soften this. You made your choice. You took something beautiful, something real, and deliberately broke it because you're too afraid to admit that maybe, just maybe, your perfect Hilda isn't what she seems. Live with that. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow hurt more than a slam would have. April made it to the elevator before her composure cracked. As tears finally fell, she remembered his tenderness just hours ago, how he'd kissed away her tears of joy, how he'd held her like she was the most precious thing in his world. In the suite, Shane stared at the closed door, his phone buzzing incessantly with messages from Hilda. April's perfume lingered in the air, mixing with the scent of roses and last night's champagne. The bed still bore the imprint of their bodies, the sheets tangled from their passion. His phone lit up with a text from his father. The press is already asking questions. Fix this. Now. I can't, he typed back, his fingers numb. It's done. Nothing's done until I say it's done, came the immediate reply. Find her. Apologize. Bring her back. But Shane knew it was too late. He'd seen something break in April's eyes when he'd called her an adopted charity case. Some wounds cut too deep for simple apologies to heal. The morning sun climbed higher over Manhattan, illuminating a city that would soon be buzzing with news of the Walton-Damon marriage's spectacular implosion. But for now, in two separate corners of the city, two hearts beat with private pain, one from wounds inflicted, the other from the creeping realization that those wounds had been inflicted in error. Neither knew that this moment of cruelty would set in motion events that would force them both to confront their deepest fears and strongest desires. For now, they remained apart, each dealing with the aftermath of a beautiful night destroyed by morning's harsh light and wounded pride. Chapter 10. The Truth Revealed. 2 weeks after April's departure, Shane sat in his private office at Walton Tower, staring at the untouched glass of scotch on his desk. The merger was falling apart. Both companies' stocks were plummeting, and the press was having a field day with rumors of his rekindled relationship with Hilda. A knock at his door interrupted his brooding. "Come in," he called, expecting another crisis to manage. Instead, his old friend Jean-Luc Beaumont strode in, impeccably dressed as always. The French billionaire tech mogul had flown in specifically for Shane's wedding and had stayed in New York, watching the ensuing drama with keen interest. "Mon ami," Jean-Luc's accent was thick with concern, "we need to talk about Hilda." Shane's jaw tightened. "Not you too. I've had enough lectures about my personal life." "This isn't a lecture." Jean-Luc placed a thick folder on Shane's desk. "This is proof." "Proof of what?" "Of what your wife tried to tell you, about Hilda." Jean-Luc's normally jovial face was serious. "You asked me to watch her, remember? To see if April's accusations had any merit?" Shane remembered the conversation hazily, a moment of doubt after one of Hilda's more suspicious disappearances. He'd asked Jean-Luc to have his security team keep an eye on her, more to prove April wrong than anything else. "What did you find?" He tried to keep his voice neutral, though his heart was racing. Jean-Luc opened the folder, spreading photographs across the desk. "In the past 2 weeks alone, she's had dinner with Marcus Davidson, tech billionaire, shopping trips with James Chen, real estate mogul. Weekend in Miami with Thomas Harrison, oil heir. Each photo was time-stamped, each showing Hilda in intimate situations with different wealthy men. But it was the final photo that hit Shane hardest, Hilda leaving a jewelry store, Marcus Davidson's black card in her hand. "That's the emerald necklace she told me she bought herself," Shane said quietly, recognition dawning. "She's been playing this game for years," Jean-Luc continued, pulling out more documents. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, gift records, all from different men. She's been living quite comfortably off their competing affections. Shane's world tilted on its axis. April's words echoed in his memory. "She's using you." "She doesn't love you, Shane. She loves your money, your position." "There's more." Jean-Luc's voice was gentle now. "We found evidence of insider trading. She's been using information gathered from her relationships to make strategic investments. The SEC would be very interested." Shane stood abruptly, moving to the window. The city spread out below him, unchanged despite his world crumbling. "Why didn't I see it?" "Because you didn't want to," his friend replied simply. "And because she's very good at what she does. But there's someone who did see it, who tried to warn you." April. Her name felt like ashes in his mouth. He'd destroyed something real and precious for a beautiful lie. Jean-Luc gathered the evidence back into the folder. "The question is, what will you do with this information?" Before Shane could answer, his phone buzzed, Hilda's face lighting up the screen. With trembling fingers he answered, putting it on speaker. "Baby," her voice purred, "I miss you. Can we meet tonight? I have something special planned." "Like your plans with Marcus Davidson?" Shane's voice was ice. Or was it Thomas Harrison this weekend? The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about." "No?" He laughed bitterly. "Should we discuss the emerald necklace, the weekend in Miami, the insider trading?" "Shane," her voice turned wheedling, "let me explain." "Save it," he cut her off. "We're done, Hilda. Don't contact me again." "You can't do this to me." Her sweet facade cracked. "After everything we've been through? You'd throw it all away for that adopted nobody. That adopted nobody saw right through you." Shane's voice shook with anger. "She tried to warn me, and I was too blind to listen. Goodbye, Hilda." He ended the call, slumping in his chair. Jean-Luc watched him with sympathy. "What have I done?" Shane whispered. "I threw away something real for this." "The question is," Jean-Luc said quietly, "what are you going to do about it?" Shane stood, determination replacing despair. "Find her. I need to find April." But locating April proved harder than expected. She'd disappeared completely, leaving no trace at her usual haunts. The Damons weren't speaking to the Waltons, and her friends closed ranks around her. "She's gone," her best friend informed him coldly when he tracked her down. "Gone to build a life away from your cruelty and games." The words stung because they were true. He'd been cruel, playing games with something precious. Now all he had was evidence of Hilda's deception and a heart full of regret. Jean-Luc watched his friend's desperate search with growing concern. "Perhaps," he suggested one evening, "you should focus on becoming the man worthy of her forgiveness, no? Before trying to find her." The words hit home. Shane threw himself into damage control, not for the press or the company, but for his soul. He made public statements, taking full responsibility for the marriage's collapse. He provided evidence of Hilda's schemes to the SEC, ensuring she couldn't hurt anyone else. But at night, alone in his penthouse, he tortured himself with memories of his wedding night. April's beauty, her gentleness, the way she touched him like he was something precious. How had he repaid that gift? With cruel words and colder actions. Weeks turned into months. The business world slowly stabilized as both families worked to salvage the merger. But Shane's personal life remained in shambles. Every society event, every business function reminded him of what he'd lost. Then one day, browsing through a fashion magazine in his office, he saw it, a small article about an upcoming designer whose sustainable fashion line was creating buzz in the industry. The designer's name wasn't familiar, but the sketches, he recognized April's style immediately. She'd done it. She'd pursued her dreams, built something of her own. Pride and regret warred in his heart as he studied the article. His phone rang. Jean-Luc again. "Turn on the business news," his friend said without preamble. The TV flickered to life, showing April at a press conference, announcing a major retailer's investment in her sustainable fashion line. She looked beautiful, confident, successful, everything he'd tried to deny she could be. As he watched her speak passionately about sustainable fashion and ethical business practices, Shane finally understood the full magnitude of what he'd lost. Not just a beautiful woman, not just a convenient merger, but a partner who could have helped him become a better man. The evidence of Hilda's betrayal lay forgotten on his desk. It had opened his eyes. Yes, but too late. The truth had set him free from one lie, only to show him a greater truth. He had destroyed something genuine in pursuit of something false. Now the question was, could he find a way to make it right? Or had his cruelty and pride cost him the one person who had seen past his facade to the man he could be? The Manhattan skyline offered no answers as night fell, only the glittering reminder of how far he had to go to become worthy of a second chance. Chapter 11. The Chase. 6 months had passed since the disastrous morning after their wedding night. April's sustainable fashion line, Pure Heart Designs, had become the talk of the industry. Her commitment to ethical manufacturing and innovative sustainable materials had caught the attention of major retailers, and her designs were selling out in prestigious stores across the country. Shane watched her success from afar, his pride in her achievements mixed with deep regret. Every magazine cover featuring her designs, every business article praising her innovation was both a joy and a torture. She'd built something remarkable entirely on her own, proving everyone who'd ever doubted her wrong, including him. The autumn evening was settling over Manhattan when Shane's security team alerted him to April's location. She'd been spotted leaving her new design studio in the fashion district, walking alone despite the late hour. Without thinking, he ordered his driver to follow, keeping a discreet distance. April's figure cut an elegant silhouette against the city lights. She'd changed in the past months. There was a new confidence in her stride, a strength that came from proving herself on her own terms. Her success had nothing to do with the Damon name or the Walton fortune. It was entirely her own achievement. As she turned down a quieter street, Shane noticed 3 men emerge from the shadows, their intentions clear in their predatory movements. His heart stopped as he saw them begin to follow her. "Stop the car!" he ordered sharply, already opening the door before the vehicle fully halted. April had noticed her followers too. Her pace quickened, but the men moved faster, cutting off her escape routes. Shane was already running when he heard her first cry of alarm. "Hey, beautiful," one of the men called, his voice carrying menace. "Why don't you share some of that designer money with us?" "Stay back." April's voice was steady despite her fear. "Take my purse if you want it, but stay away from me." "Maybe we want more than your purse," another man leered, reaching for her arm. That's when Shane arrived, his fist connecting with the nearest attacker's jaw with a satisfying crunch. Years of boxing training kicked in as he positioned himself between April and her assailants. "Touch her again." His voice was deadly quiet. "And it will be the last thing you ever do." The thugs, realizing their easy target now had very dangerous protection, backed away slowly before turning to run. Shane started to pursue them, but April's hand on his arm stopped him. Shane. Her voice trembled slightly. What are you doing here? He turned to face her, drinking in the sight of her up close for the first time in months. I've been watching over you, from a distance, making sure you're safe. Stalking me, you mean? But there was no real anger in her voice, just confusion and lingering fear from the attack. Protecting you, he corrected gently, though clearly not well enough if you're walking these streets alone at night. I can take care of myself, she replied, but swayed slightly on her feet. Shane caught her elbow, steadying her. Let me drive you home, please, just to make sure you're safe. April hesitated, studying his face in the streetlight. He looked different, thinner, more serious, his playboy polish replaced by something more genuine. All right, she agreed finally, but just a ride home. In the back of his luxury car, silence stretched between them. Shane couldn't take his eyes off her. The subtle changes in her appearance, the new maturity in her bearing. I've been following your success, he said finally. Pure Heart Designs is extraordinary. Thank you, she replied formally, though I'm surprised you'd pay attention to something as trivial as fashion. The gentle dig at his past dismissal of her dreams made him wince. I was wrong about so many things, April. Your dreams weren't trivial. You weren't trivial. She turned to look out the window, but he caught her reflection in the glass, the slight tremor in her lip, the brightness in her eyes. I saw the truth about Hilda, he continued quietly. You were right about her, about everything. Does that matter now? April's voice was barely audible. It matters because I owe you an apology, because I destroyed something beautiful and real for something false and shallow. Shane's voice cracked with emotion, because I've spent every day since you left regretting what I did. April turned back to him, her eyes searching his face. What do you want from me, Shane? A chance, he replied honestly. Not to pick up where we left off. I don't deserve that. But a chance to show you who I really am, who I'm trying to become. And who is that? Someone worthy of you. The words came straight from his heart. Someone who sees you for the amazing woman you are, not the convenient merger you were supposed to be. April was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. The car pulled up to her building, a modest but elegant apartment complex, bought with her own success rather than family money. Thank you for tonight, she said finally, for helping me with those men. April ... Shane started to reach for her hand but stopped himself. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve another chance. But please, just think about it. She stepped out of the car, then turned back. I have a fashion show next week at the Metropolitan Museum, if you're serious about wanting to understand my world. I'll be there, he promised immediately. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, the first he'd seen since that terrible morning. Good night, Shane. He watched until she was safely inside the building, his heart pounding with hope and fear. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't even close to what he wanted, but it was a start. Back in his penthouse, Shane pulled out every magazine featuring April's work, studying them with new eyes. He saw now what he'd been too blind to see before, the passion, the creativity, the dedication that went into every design. His phone buzzed with a text from Jean-Luc. Did you find her? Yes, Shane replied. And maybe, just maybe, I haven't lost her completely. The week until the fashion show stretched endlessly. Shane threw himself into learning everything he could about sustainable fashion, ethical manufacturing, the entire world April had created for herself. He realized something profound. April hadn't just built a successful business, she'd created something meaningful. Her designs weren't just beautiful, they were changing the industry, proving that fashion could be both luxurious and sustainable. The night of the fashion show arrived, and Shane arrived early, taking his assigned seat in the front row. The anticipation in the room was electric. Pure Heart Designs had become the hottest ticket in fashion. When April appeared briefly before the show, she looked stunning in one of her own designs. Their eyes met across the runway, and something passed between them. Recognition, possibility, hope. The show itself was a triumph. Every piece showcased not just April's talent for design, but her commitment to sustainability and ethical production. The audience responded with enthusiasm, and Shane found himself moved by the beauty she'd created. Afterward, at the reception, he watched as she handled the press and buyers with natural grace. This was her world, and she commanded it effortlessly. "Quite different from the society events you're used to, isn't it?" Her voice behind him made him turn. "It's better," he replied honestly. "This is real. What you've created here, it's extraordinary." April studied him, noting the sincerity in his eyes. "You've changed." "I'm trying to," he admitted. "You made me want to be better. Not for the company, not for our families, but for myself, for any chance of being worthy of you." Before she could respond, they were interrupted by buyers wanting to discuss orders. But as April moved away, she glanced back at him with something softer than her usual professional mask. The night ended with possibility hanging in the air between them. No promises were made, no declarations exchanged, but something had shifted. A door that had seemed permanently closed was now perhaps slightly ajar. As Shane headed home, he felt hope for the first time in months. April hadn't forgiven him yet, but she'd allowed him this glimpse into her world. It was a beginning, and he promised himself he wouldn't waste it. The city lights twinkled around him like stars, witnesses to the possibility of redemption, of love rebuilt from the ashes of pride and prejudice. The chase wasn't over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. But this time, Shane was pursuing not just April, but the better man he could become with her in his life. Chapter 12. Love Renewed. After the fashion show's success, Shane and April's reconciliation blossomed into something deeper than either had imagined possible. This wasn't the arranged marriage of before. This was real love, born from understanding, respect, and genuine desire. Shane stood before the world's media at a press conference, his hand holding April's firmly. His voice carried the weight of truth as he declared, "I want to do this right. Our first marriage was built on business. This one will be built on love. I stand before you today, not as the heir to Walton Industries, but as a man who nearly lost everything because of his pride." April squeezed his hand as he continued, "I made terrible mistakes. I let prejudice blind me to what was real. I took something precious and pure and tried to break it. But sometimes life gives you a second chance if you're brave enough to take it. April didn't just forgive me. She taught me what real love means. Their second wedding was everything the first should have been. The plaza's grand ballroom was transformed into an ethereal garden, featuring sustainable materials that honored April's commitment to ethical fashion. She had designed her own gown, a masterpiece of sustainable silk that seemed to float around her like moonlight given form. When Shane saw her walking down the aisle, his heart stopped. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," he whispered as she reached him, "inside and out." April's eyes glistened with tears as she whispered back, "You see me now. Really see me." Their vows were written from the heart, not crafted by corporate lawyers. Shane's voice shook with emotion as he spoke. "April, I once promised never to accept you as my wife, never to touch you." Those were the words of a fool who didn't understand what love really means. "Today, I make new promises. I promise to cherish every moment with you. I promise to support your dreams as if they were my own. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that I deserve this second chance." April's response made even the most hardened business tycoons in attendance wipe away tears. Shane, you broke my heart once, but in breaking it, you gave me the strength to become who I really am. Your cruelty pushed me to chase my dreams, and your redemption showed me that true love can heal any wound. I promise to love both the man you are and the man you're still becoming. I promise to be your partner in all things, your shelter in every storm, your compass when you lose your way. The reception was a celebration not just of their love, but of transformation. April's sustainable fashion empire had grown beyond anyone's expectations, and Shane had become her biggest champion. The corporate merger that had once been their prison was now just a footnote to their personal story. Their first dance was to A Second Chance at Love, performed by a string quartet. As they moved across the floor, Shane whispered, "I love how your business mind works as brilliantly as your creative one." April smiled up at him. "And I love how you've learned to balance power with tenderness." Later that night, in the plaza's royal suite, passion overwhelmed them both. This wasn't like their first wedding night, shadowed by doubt and unspoken resentments. This was pure love, expressed through touch and taste and whispered words of devotion. "I love you," Shane breathed against April's skin, tracing patterns of adoration across her body. "Every part of you, your strength, your grace, your brilliant mind, your incredible heart." April's response was to pull him closer, their bodies moving together with an intensity that surprised them both. This wasn't just desire, it was redemption, forgiveness, love in its purest form. "You're everything," she whispered between kisses. "Everything I never dared to hope for." Their passion built to such heights that the antique bed, despite its solid construction, couldn't withstand their enthusiasm. With a dramatic crack that made them both freeze, the frame gave way beneath them. For a moment, they stared at each other in shocked silence. Then April began to giggle, and Shane's deep laugh joined hers. "Did we just break the bed?" she gasped between fits of laughter. "I believe we did." Shane grinned, pulling her close against his chest. "Should I apologize?" "Never apologize for loving me too much," she whispered, drawing him down for another kiss that promised more passion to come. They lay in their destroyed bed as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, bodies entwined, hearts beating as one. The broken bed frame would become part of their personal legend, a testament to love's power to overcome pride, prejudice, and even the strongest of barriers. "I was so blind," Shane mused, stroking April's hair. "All that time wasted on pride and prejudice when real love was right in front of me." "Not wasted," April corrected gently. "That journey made us who we are. Your cruelty pushed me to prove myself. My pain taught you empathy. We had to break before we could rebuild something stronger." Their story wasn't just about second chances or redemption. It was about two people who found their way through darkness to a love stronger than duty, stronger than pride, stronger than even the most carefully constructed business merger. As morning light filtered through the windows, Shane and April remained wrapped in each other's arms, their love having literally broken the bed, a fitting end to a night of passion that marked not just their second wedding, but the true beginning of their life together. "What happens now?" April asked softly, tracing patterns on Shane's chest. "Now," he smiled, rolling them over carefully on their broken bed, "we build something new, together. No more hiding behind corporate masks or social expectations, just us, living and loving as ourselves." Their laughter and whispered words of love continued as the sun rose over Manhattan, promising a new day and a new beginning. The world would soon be abuzz with news of their romantic reunion and spectacular second wedding, but for now, they remained in their private paradise, where a broken bed told the story of love strong enough to break through any barrier. The end.